Ukraine is a fascinating and very important country. It is the second largest country in Europe, second only to Russia. It has a population of 45 million. Oops, wait a second here. Here we go. The capital, Kiev, is a major European capital of much history. This is the Maidan, where the important events of 2014 took place, a symbol of the resistance and patriotism of the Ukrainian people. It is, as we all know now from this crisis, a real breadbasket of Europe. You can see how important Ukraine is in global agriculture. Between them, Ukraine and Russia account for 30% of all food exports in the world. And that's why this promising, important country is going through such trauma now with this barbaric Russian invasion that has got the whole world now concerned about the future of this region. How did this all unfold? Well, of course, it began with the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991. It collapsed into 15 republics. Ironically, Russia and Ukraine at that time were instrumental in promoting the breakup. Boris Yeltsin was in favor, so Russia-Ukraine cooperated very closely in 1991. But already by 1994, you could see some potential problems. In 1994, the Bucharest Memorandum was signed. Ukraine had former Soviet nuclear weapons on its territory. And the United States very much wanted to remove nuclear weapons from the former republics. And so Ukraine agreed. It was a nuclear power at that time. You agreed to this. Here you can see Boris Yeltsin, Bill Clinton, Leonid Kuchma, and John Major signing this agreement, which gave Ukraine assurances of its security if it would give up its weapons. Now, the United States was insisting on the word guarantees, and the Russians refused to accept the word guarantees. They said assurances, which is less strong term. You could see already then the ambivalence that was developing in the Russian position. Of course, in the ensuing years, NATO and the European Union began receiving members who wanted to join. This expansion included the Baltic states, former republics, and began moving closer to countries like Ukraine and Georgia. Now, in 2008, a crisis broke out in Georgia, and Russia did what they've done now in Ukraine. They occupied two key areas of Georgia and declared at that time that they had a sphere of influence in their immediate region. Now, the West, the United States, always has opposed that concept that there should be a sphere of influence. A country like Ukraine should be free to choose its affiliations. And this is a very strong principle for the West, for NATO, and for the European Union. And it's at the heart of the conflict. The crisis worsened in 2014 when Ukraine, there in green, and Georgia were caught between two huge economic entities, the European Union and the Eurasian Customs Union. Basically, Putin was insisting that Ukraine join his union. The whole thing exploded into a crisis, which led to, as we know, the occupation of Crimea and the beginning of the Donbass conflict. Now, Putin, very ominously, about a year ago, started making speeches saying that Ukraine is not a country and has never been a country. These were already warning signs that something bad was coming. He gave several long interviews, wrote articles about this. Now, in response, the West, although not letting Ukraine into NATO yet, has been increasing its military support. Actually, the Trump administration gave military weapons to Ukraine that the Obama administration refused to do. And in September this year, Ukraine and the United States signed a charter of security cooperation in which the United States made it clear that Ukraine would be brought into the Western transatlantic institutions, and the door is still open to NATO. The Russians started mobilizing 5 days after this agreement, in which the United States had so clearly stated its ongoing support. The Russians underestimated the resolve of the Ukrainians. They underestimated how European Ukraine had become in 2017. In May, the EU allowed visa-free travel from Ukraine into the entire Schengen area of the European Union. This and other steps really reinforced a kind of a European identity, a European feeling in Ukraine. The Russians really underestimated how much Ukraine had changed. Because for Putin, he has an imaginary concept of something called Novorossiya, which is here the eastern part of Ukraine, which he says is historically part of Russia, going back to Catherine the Great. Here you can see the regions that are under conflict. He uses as his justification the fact that a lot of eastern Ukraine has Russian as their first tongue, as opposed to Ukrainian. And of course, a lot of the key agricultural and especially industrial areas are all in the east. So this is the prize that after having tried to take Kiev, the Russians now are focused on this region. And you can see here's as of 2 days ago where the fighting is going on, with Ukraine maybe starting a counteroffensive toward Kherson. But the danger is that Russia will try to hold referendums in these areas starting already in September. So we're at a very important moment in the conflict. Now, the West is supporting Ukraine, yes, but not actually getting involved apart from targeting. We are helping them to target their missiles, but we're providing them HIMARS, very accurate missiles, which are wreaking havoc behind the lines for the Russian troops. And just yesterday, we announced we'll be giving them HARMS missiles, which are anti-radar. This can knock out Russian radar and can open the skies to Ukrainian military jets. So this could be an important step. The United States is now giving another $1 billion of military aid. 50 other countries are also aiding Ukraine. And so our total has been $9.8 billion worth of aid to Ukraine because the West stands behind Ukraine in this conflict. A final point, it's been a human tragedy unfolding on the ground in Ukraine. 1/3 of Ukrainians have been forced from their homes. Over 10 million Ukrainians have crossed the border, leaving Ukraine. 6.2 million are internally displaced. And some are returning. In fact, I'm interested to ask Roman and Yuliana whether they see signs of people coming back. But all around the world, people are receiving Ukrainian refugees. In Minnesota, there are about 900 Ukrainians who have applied for refugee status here. 300 so far have been given humanitarian parole, which is a 2-year program where they can stay that long. So the world is standing up for Ukraine. It's a tragic situation, a barbarian invasion. And I look forward now, and we all look forward to hearing from Yuliana and Roman how things are looking now on the ground, how things are in their daily lives in the midst of this crisis. So, Roman, Yuliana, if you would just like to say a few words at the beginning before we do a few questions, and welcome.
Thank you, Tom, for such a great intro. Thank you, Orlyn, for your introduction. Really appreciate that. Indeed, we've known each other for a while, and it's a great pleasure to have an opportunity to speak to such a wonderful group today.